Hello, Resilient Wives. Welcome to another episode of the Resilient Wife podcast. I'm so grateful that you're here today. I want to give you encouragement and a word from the Lord, which I believe He wants you to hold on to in this season. This is a word specifically for those who feel as if they are going through a Job season. Now, Job in the Bible, as we talked about before, and as I encourage you to read about in the book of Job in the Bible, Job was a godly man who stood for righteousness and truth and loved the Lord with all of his heart. And through the adversary's request to God that Job be tested, Job ended up losing everything that mattered to him. He lost so much in his life. Everything was stripped away from him, but he did not curse God. He remained faithful to his obedience to God. And in that, God rewarded him in the end by replacing what he lost. And it says that God was so faithful in replacing what Job lost that he received double portion. Double portion. Now, if you're in your Job season feeling like you are losing everything that has ever mattered to you because you are going through a marital separation or divorce, I am here to speak to you today to remain faithful to God. I know that it feels like everything around you is being stripped away. We talked in a previous episode about why a good God would allow us to go through so much pain. I understand because I've walked through my own Job season. I talked about how my children were withheld from me. I talked about how I lost my marriage. The way that I had envisioned my life going was stripped from me. The man that I cared so deeply about walked away, not only from me, but ultimately from God. But I'm here to tell you that God gives us an understanding in His Word of why He would allow such things to take place. And I hope that they encourage you today. In the book of Job, Job 36, verse 15 and onward, God says, "But by means of their suffering, He rescues those who suffer, for He gets their attention through adversity." Now, I want to open your eyes to see that in this trial season that you are going through, God is trying to draw you nearer to Him for not only the battle ahead, but for the goodness He has in store for you to come. In my own journey, I have had to lean on God in a way that I never imagined before. But in that beauty, I discovered a God who cares so intimately for me and is all that I truly need. That can sound scary when you're not close to God. Believe me, I used to hear people say that and I'm like, that sounds crazy and religious. But God has met all of my needs, including all of my heart's desires. And so He says, for He gets their attention through adversity. When we walk through trials that don't make sense, God is using them. He has allowed them, beloved. And that is not to say that we should be mad at God. God has beauty in store through these trials. Verse 16 specifically says, God is leading you away from danger, Job, to a place free from distress. He is setting your table with the best food, but you are obsessed with whether the godless will be judged. Don't worry, judgment and justice will be upheld. Listen, we can be so focused on what our spouse is doing, what they're getting away with, how they are turning away from us, and they seem to be living happily. They seem to be living content. But God is saying, don't worry about that. I am doing something far greater for you. He says, I am leading you away from danger. Some of you don't know the depths of your spouse's hearts. God has to work on them through this marital separation. God has to reveal things to them that you might be in danger of. Had you remained close to your spouse in this time, perhaps God knew that you were in danger. God says He's leading you to a place free from distress. When God restores your marriage, and beloved, believe me, He is able to restore your marriage. When God restores your marriage, He's going to lead you to a place free from distress. Now, if we're honest with ourselves, there's a reason why we got here. Our marriages, whether the strife was outward or hidden, they were built on issues that were not being dealt with. There were things beneath the surface that perhaps have been there since our childhoods. And God is working on those things through this time. Verse 17 says, "But you are obsessed with whether the godless will be judged. Don't worry, judgment and justice will be upheld. But watch out, or you may be seduced by wealth. Don't let yourself be bribed into sin." Now, of course, I went on to verse 18 in there. But I want to state that at the beginning of my journey, I felt so betrayed. I felt so sad, but also so focused on whether or not God was going to bring an understanding to my spouse of what he did wrong. And let me tell you, God surely will bring that in your situation when you remain close to God, but you have to be okay with opening your hands and allowing it to be God's work. You're not going to be the one to get through your spouse. No matter what you say, you are the enemy to your spouse right now. And your heart is not going to flourish in this season if you are only focused on whether or not God is revealing to your spouse how they hurt or betrayed you. That cannot be your focus. God is using this time to set up a new life for you, to set up a place full of prosperity. It says he is setting your table with the best food. That is an overflow from the goodness of God, and that is what we should be focused on. Giving praise and thanksgiving despite our hurts, knowing and believing that God is doing something far greater than we could imagine in this season, because we know that God works all things together for good. So even in the face of evil and betrayal and the deepest hurts that we have probably ever experienced, we can have faith that this season did not come as a surprise to God. In fact, could we even dare to believe that it came as a mercy from God? Because he knew the danger that we were in. He knew the distress we were in. And in Job 36:16, again, God states clearly, God is leading you away from danger, Job, to a place free from distress. Now, what I find so fascinating is in the book of Isaiah, chapter 54, starting in verse 16 through 17, God says, "I have created the blacksmith who fans the coals beneath the forge and makes the weapons of destruction. And I have created the armies that destroy." Now I want you to meditate on that on your own. And when you do, I want you to dare to consider that perhaps God allowed this season for your good and allowed the creation of the weapons formed against you in order to forge you in the flames of the fires that came. Let me elaborate. When God says, "I have created the blacksmith who fans the coals beneath the forge and makes the weapons of destruction," God did not see this season as a surprise. If he keeps the enemy on a leash, which we know he does from the book of Job, if the enemy must ask God for permission to come against God's chosen, beloved children, can we dare to believe that God is big enough that he created the very weapons that are being used by God to forge you into women of true valor in this season? That changes everything, beloved. The trials that you are facing will not harm you in the end, but will be for your good. If we go on to read verse 17, it states clearly, "But in that coming day, no weapon turned against you will succeed." Now this is the NLT version. Some versions say, "No weapon formed against you will prosper." That is a direct promise from God to his children. Beloved, hear me. Anything setting itself up against you in this season will not win, will not have the victory. Why? Because it was created by God to forge you in the flames of fire for his purpose. It can't win. That was not its intended purpose. Its intended purpose was to be used by God to raise you up into who he has called you to be in victory. You are more than a conqueror in Christ. It goes on in verse 17 to say, "You will silence every voice raised up to accuse you." And I'm going to pause there. I can speak in authority that I have seen this verse played out and lived out in my own life. When my husband left, he placed many false allegations against me. Allegations that seemed so heinous and straight from the pit, and made me question how I would prove my innocence. But let me tell you, beloved, it was not me, it was God. God brought evidence that I didn't even know existed. I didn't even know evidence was in existence to clear my name. From years prior, from present, God brought in missing pieces like a puzzle to ensure that his word did not fail. When he says, no weapon turned against you will succeed, and you will silence every voice raised up to accuse you. Those accusing voices that came in the midst of our separation, they failed. They weren't true, and God proved it. It goes on to say, these benefits are enjoyed by the servants of the Lord. Their vindication will come from me. I, the Lord, have spoken. Whew, that's powerful. Anytime it says, I, the Lord, have spoken, I take it to heart. And I have seen this play out, and I believe that if you are in a similar situation as me, you will see it played out too. It takes relying on God, kneeling at the foot of the cross, and allowing him to fight your battles, and his word will not fail. So I simply speak over you today that if you are in a trial that seems too big for you to understand the purpose of, if it seems like you are facing imminent defeat, but you are a child of God, let me tell you, beloved, this will not end how the enemy wants it to. God is using it for his purpose to fashion you up and to fashion your spouse up for who he needs them to be. God has not forgotten them. His eye is on them too. Continue to pray and intercede for your beloved spouse. Continue to trust in God's promises and continue to understand deep in your soul that God is faithful to finish the good work he started. It may not seem good to you now, but you are going to look back and see the hand of God moving on your behalf in victory every step of the way. I love you, beloved. Keep up the good fight of faith. Bye-bye.